Hi, my name is Tim Macpherson. I'm publisher of Saltwater Boat Angling, but I'm also a director of the Angling Trust. And this is the first in a series of videos about some of the marine campaigns that we've done in 2020, starting with the Fisheries Bill. With me to talk about that is the Head of Sea Angling, David Mitchell. Welcome, David.
Thanks, Tim.
And, let's start by talking about probably the biggest issue that is going to affect sea angling into the future, and that's what is now the Fisheries Act.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, can you just explain a little bit about how that's worked and what we've done in order to be able to, get the best for sea anglers?
Yeah, no problem. So the Fisheries Act is a new piece of legislation as a result of the UK leaving the European Union, and it's the first time in a generation that the UK has had its own fisheries legislation, which replaces the common fisheries policy. And it's now an act of Parliament. We've been working on it for the last couple of years as it's made its way through the Houses of Parliament. And it's really because of the work of the Angling Trust that recreational fishing is now recognised and included in the Act. That means that we will have a voice in how UK sea fisheries are managed in the future, but also recreational fishing will qualify for funding for the development and promotion of recreational fishing. So this is really a watershed moment for recreational fishing and angling in the UK, and overturns some of the biggest problems we've had in making any positive change for fish stocks and angling as a result of being part of the EU Common Fisheries Policy. So the fact that we're now included is a massive deal, and like I say, it's due to a lot of work that's been put in by the Angling Trust and our partners over the last 2 years. So that's it in summary. There's a lot of work still to do, but it is now a piece of UK legislation for the first time, as I say, in anyone's living memory.
So what, in practical terms, just briefly, is this going to mean for anglers on the beach and on the boat? I mean, are they going to see any sort of real tangible benefits immediately, or is it going to take time?
It'll take time to develop policies, but what they will start to see is policies taking into account recreational fishing and the contribution it has to society and to coastal communities. So what we're doing now is working with the government to try and develop what's called a fisheries statement, which will spell out what policies the government will put in place to achieve the objectives of this new piece of legislation. So it will take time. The Act of Parliament was described as a framework. So it's a way of us transitioning from the CFP into UK legislation, but there's a lot that still needs to be built into it. And that will take time with secondary legislation and policies to develop and support it. So anglers may not see any immediate impact, but we're very much hoping that funding sources to help promote and develop angling will start flowing through at some point next year, and that will be an immediate change. We'll see for the first time recreational fishing will be allowed to be funded, which again is something that's a real change from the EU, when what used to fund fishing was solely accessible to the commercial fishing industry. So a lot of work still needs to be done, but I think in terms of the first initial changes and opportunities that anglers might see, it's likely to be around the availability of funding to help move things forward.
And one further thing, a lot of anglers, of course, are keen to make sure that we protect our fish stocks and keep French trawlers out of English waters and all of those sort of issues which we can't actually affect as anglers. But does this bill help to address any of those concerns? Because we want more fish to catch.
The Act gives sovereignty for the UK over its waters, and the ability to decide who fishes in UK waters. So the bill will provide the ability for the UK to decide who is allowed to fish in the UK waters.
And what about bass? I mention that because it's one issue where we have been working with the European Union on bass stocks and how to manage them. How is that going to be affected in terms of bag limits and how you can fish for them?
Yeah. Well, the UK will continue to have to negotiate with the EU over the share of any stocks that we have. I mean, this is a fact of life. Most of the stocks that we fish in the UK are shared between us and other members of the European Union. So irrespective of whether we leave or not, we're still going to have to negotiate over how much collectively we all fish in order for that to be at sustainable levels. So at the moment, there are negotiations taking place between the UK and the EU about bass fishing for next year. And again, that'll continue. We're not exactly sure in what form that will take in years to come, but we will negotiate with them how much of each stock we will be allowed to fish for. But then it's much more up to the UK now, through the Fisheries Act, to be able to decide exactly how we want to do that, and what we want to do with that. We may decide that we want to change the profile of the bass fishery and make our own decisions about what we do with our allocation. But what we can't do is simply go out there and just start fishing as much as we like, when we like, because all that does is lead to overfishing, and then everybody suffers. The fish stocks suffer, the environment suffers, the commercial fishing industry suffer, and the members of the public who go fishing recreationally will most certainly suffer as well. So whether we're members of the EU or not, with bass and with other species, we're still going to need to negotiate with them. And this is what Norway, this is what Iceland, this is what the Faroe Islands do with the UK and have been doing not with the UK, with the EU for decades already. So it's nothing new. It's simply that anyone within Europe that fishes within these shared stocks has to come to some kind of agreement with each other about how much we're all fishing. Otherwise the stocks will collapse because we all do our own thing. It's a bit like everyone having a shared bank account and just taking out as much money as you want all the time without talking to anyone else about how much they're taking out. Eventually you'd find that the bank account was empty. So it's just about communicating with each other, if you want to use that analogy, about who's taking out what when, to make sure that you don't leave yourself with a nasty overdraft at the end of the year.
So, okay, that's all very well, but what has the Angling Trust actually done to make this happen? I mean, what influence have you brought to bear? And would it have just happened anyway if the Angling Trust didn't exist?
I think, in a word, no, it wouldn't have just happened. The Angling Trust has been very, very involved from the outset, working with governments, working with MPs, contributing to consultations, working with select committees to give evidence about why recreational angling should be included. There's a whole range of ways that we've been involved in the political process to ensure that recreational fishing was included. We've been proposing amendments to the legislation. We've been lobbying MPs, lobbying members of the House of Lords to make sure that we're included, providing evidence to say exactly why recreational fishing is important and why it should be funded. We did a lot of work with the angling trade to make sure that they were aware of what was going on and helping them to respond to consultations as well, and also working with other angling organisations, national angling organisations from around the UK to help them contribute to the consultations. So recreational fishing had a very strong voice in the outcomes of these consultations. So we've been very heavily involved at every level of making sure that recreational fishing is included. And I think without the input of the Angling Trust, we wouldn't be included as we are, and we wouldn't be qualifying for grants and funding. So it's really a lot of work that's been put in by the Angling Trust to ensure that we are in this position. And we know that we want to be in this position because for the last 10 years of the Angling Trust existence, and a long time before that with predecessor organisations, we've seen how impossible it can be to make any positive change for recreational fishing through the common fisheries policy when recreational fishing isn't recognised. And that's why what the Angling Trust has done has been so important over the last 2 years. A lot of it goes unnoticed because the lobbying and the political work is not particularly attractive. A lot of people aren't interested in the detail of what goes on behind the scenes, but that doesn't make it any less important. And it's this kind of work that goes on to make sure, in the background, to make sure that recreational fishing is included. That is really the groundwork that's gone on to put us in the position where we are now.
So yeah, that's fascinating stuff. But what I'm interested in listening to what you're saying is who is the we? Because it sounds like an awful lot of people have got involved, and obviously the Angling Trust is not a big organisation. So was it just you on your own, or what kind of help and support?
It's a very small team. It's a very small team of people within the Angling Trust. There's myself. There's my colleague Stuart Singleton-White, who's the head of campaigns. There's Martin Salter, who's our head policy advisor. So there's a very very small team that have done a lot of work and made a massive contribution to. But on top of that, we have many volunteers that have helped develop policy and have helped contribute to what we want to see in the future. And many of those are members of the Angling Trust Conservation and Access Group, which is a group of experienced members who volunteer to sit on the group, and they bring a great level of knowledge, expertise, understanding of the issues, and they advise us on policy. So it's by no means a large number of people working at the Angling Trust. It's been done on a very, very limited budget with a very small number of staff.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much, David. That's very interesting information about what we've been doing this year.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. It was good to talk to you. And if anyone wants to know more or find out more information about what we've discussed, everything is available on the Angling Trust website at anglingtrust.net.
Thank you.